And I'm going to go ahead and move to the last item on the addendum, item 12, Sales Tax Implementation Plan Ordinance. All right, thank you. And I have no cards that have been submitted to speak to this item. So what's the pleasure for it?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Valadez.
I think we've gone over this a number of times, so I'm just going to go ahead and move item number 12 and ordinance number 2018-16.
Second. Supervisor Johnson, maybe second. Supervisor Miller?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to object.
And I will object as well.
Okay, so you could have waited for the vote, but that's okay, because we know that that's going to kill it. And certainly Supervisor Miller and Supervisor Christie have voiced their objections to this in the paper already. So we understand that. I'm not a particular fan of sales taxes, and I think that that's problematic in itself. But I think it is time to try and do something, and I think with the item having the addition of some money put into it to help ameliorate some of the issues related to lower income people and the disproportionate impact of sales taxes, I think we're in good shape. So, any other comments from board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Christie, please.
I just hope that in the future that this board and this community continue to work together in some fashion to try to find a meaningful, thorough and comprehensive road repair plan. When I brought out my plan last October, one of the key foundations, in addition to having the RTA administrate the road repair plan, was that 100% of the revenues generated for this plan go directly to the roads. This ordinance does not even come close to meeting that requirement on my part, but I certainly hope that there is a feeling among the board as well as among the community that the important thing is that we just fix the roads, that we find a way to do it, and that we continue to work at some level to have some sort of a comprehensive plan to address our road needs. And I will be voting against this ordinance.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Valadez.
I'd just like to clarify, yes, 100% of it does go to roads in this part. What it does have, the ordinance does have language that does commit $3 million out of the growth in the general fund towards social services. So 100% of it, of the sales tax does go to roads.
Absolutely true. And it's something that I guess you just have to read to figure it out. Supervisor Miller?
Mr. Chairman, I've been meeting with folks on this who are very concerned about the roads, and I just will say that this is a general sales tax which can be used for anything, and the board can move that money for anything. There are no state statutory requirements holding us accountable to that. What I have agreed to look at is an actual road sales tax, and right now we are unable to enact that because of the population requirement of 400,000 or less for the actual fund that would be monitored by the Arizona Auditor General's Office. I've agreed to look at those statutes and possibly support legislation in the next legislative session to work on that. I believe the taxpayers absolutely deserve to have a fund that is ironclad, that doesn't have any possibility of monies being moved. And if we can find $3 million in the general fund for social services, why can't we use that money for the roads? I am unable to support this because of the fact that it's, we're already starting to be able to find monies for other things in the general fund if this tax is passed, but we can't find those monies in the general fund if this tax isn't passed. I find that very interesting. But again, I will not be supporting this as it stands today. Thank you.
Supervisor Valadez.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just please address some of those points. With all due respect, to the point of the monies can be moved around, we actually explored the possibility of trying to require the same majority or the same unanimous vote of the board in order to change the plan. Unfortunately, in spite of our best efforts, we couldn't figure out language that would pass muster legally with the advice of counsel. So what we've done, and we've done from the very beginning, is actually created a system to try and make sure that this stays accountable. It includes a couple different things. First of all, it includes 2 separate audits each year. One by the Regional Transportation Authority on the usage of the funds, and should those funds not be used for roads, those funds are either to be restored or the sales tax goes away automatically. The second audit is actually done by the Auditor General of the state of Arizona, which is a branch of the Arizona State Legislature, again with the same provisions. On top of that, we've also added provisions. We did that on this dais, I believe, 2 discussions ago, whereby the RTA also performs a performance audit on each of the member jurisdictions, including the county, and should we not be performing to standard, they will then have the ability to change the way projects are managed within that jurisdiction until that jurisdiction comes back. So there's a number of different things we've put into place to try and address some of these issues. So I understand that point. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like a roll call vote.
When we get to it, we will.
Okay.
I would also comment that I concur with Supervisor Christie in that we need to continue to work on a plan that will adequately fund the road issue here in Pima County, as I think it's critical, it's serious. But I don't ascribe to the narrative that it is the only important issue that we face here in Pima County. In fact, we face many others, and some significantly more serious. And that's a problem as well. But local government always struggles with these issues. But it's important that we retain local control over these issues. So other plans that people might have about bringing in the state legislature to mandate funding for roads here in Pima County seems to usurp local control and is a bad thing for all of us here in Pima County. I truly believe that we are going to continue to work on this issue and find a pathway to resolving it. I would also add that despite all the acrimony over roads and road funding, I think that the Pima County supervisors have a good record of doing what we say. And it's been that way since I've been on this board. And it was that way with the previous board majority as well. And I think that's a good tradition that we continue to honor, and that we ultimately honor the desire of our voters and continue to work on things as they come up. And certainly you have my commitment to continue to do that into the future. Supervisor Christie?
I just want to point out your comment regarding local plans versus state plans, and to remind you, or at least to point out, that the original Regional Transportation Authority plan was generated as a state legislature initiative in 2005 and 2006. It was voted as a result of that legislative action by the public and approved, and has over these years a terrific track record of mobility and increased enhancement for a very bad traffic problem that we had in the early part of this century. So the legislature has the opportunity, perhaps in the next cycle, to merely expand what they already put into place as a legislative option in 2006. So the point you're making, that we should solve our problem locally and not at the state level, the original Regional Transportation Authority was conceived and generated and produced as a result of legislative action.
And I would also add that, that hasn't worked so well for people in District 5. There's been tremendous discussion about the widening of Broadway and how that's going to affect one of the main corridors in our community, and there's great dissension about it. And that set of road plans was based on 20-year-old estimates that were conducted by Pima Association of Governments. And really, that's passé and not a good way to go about funding roads. in our community. We really don't know what transportation is going to look like into the future. We certainly don't know what technology is going to do to all of that. But my suspicion is that it's going to change more substantially than we ever could have known and could ever possibly imagine. And so, while Supervisor Christie, I certainly would never deign to say that the state legislature doesn't have the authority. Certainly they do. But is it the right thing? Not at all. Supervisor Valdez.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And having been part of the group that have worked on the RTA since about 2004, before we were able to get it passed in 2006, in May of that year, I believe. I think part of the issue, you're absolutely right in terms of the authority, and the idea of a regional transportation authority came through authority given from the Arizona legislature. However, the other part that's important to consider is as the regional Council of Government put together a citizens committee that conducted well over 250 meetings throughout our community that was responsible for actually developing the plan. So while the authority did come from the legislature, and actually it was, in my opinion, a pretty good idea, the plan itself was developed locally by the citizens of our community, which is why later on in May of 2006, it actually was adopted.
Very good. Supervisor Bronson?
I would just like to add that if the legislature had met its responsibility, had not swept HERC revenues, had addressed the seriousness not only in Pima County but in all the 15 counties in Arizona as to how we fund transportation, we would not have to have this conversation. So I'm disappointed that our state government is refusing to address this in a substantive way. We haven't raised the gas tax in several decades.
Since it was instituted.
We haven't kept pace with inflation. We have cars that are not even filling up at the pump, which is our main source of revenue for road repair and for expansion. And we, as a result, are having to look at how to solve this locally. And I would concur with, I think, all of my colleagues that if we don't go to Plan A is dead, Plan B is dead, hopefully staff can come up with Plan C, because we do have a road issue and we do need to fix our roads. But that's not the only hat we wear. We absolutely have to address the social services safety net. We have to address health care. These are hats that we wear and have a responsibility for. So it's not just about roads, it's about all of those things, since they all come under our umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. All right, I would ask one more thing before we go to a roll call vote. Supervisor Valdez, I would ask you to amend your motion to include closing the public hearing. And I suppose that's okay with the second of the motion, Supervisor Bronson. Very well, roll call, please.
Supervisor Bronson?
Aye.
Supervisor Christie?
No.
Supervisor Miller?
No.
Supervisor Valdez?
Aye.
Chairman Elias?
Aye. So despite the 3-2 vote, the motion fails. Needed
No,
a
it
unanimous.
No.
Excuse me, it passed. Wait.
It passed, it's an ordinance, it's not the, yeah.
Excuse me, the motion fails for lack of a unanimous vote.
No,
No.
before this passes, because you have the majority, the resolution next week has to have a unanimous vote.
Oh, well, then I stand corrected 1, 2, 3 more times, and that's good. But we all know what's coming is the truth, right? Okay,